The collector's mistake. The darkness of space erupted with light as 15 massive ships tore through the fabric of reality itself. The Zephyrian collective had arrived at Earth, and their harvester vessels stretched across the void like mechanical leviathans hungry for conquest. Each ship measured over 3 kilometers in length, their crystalline hulls pulsing with captured starlight, and their weapon arrays glowing with deadly promise. Commander Krelix stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Star Render, watching Earth grow larger on his display screens. The blue marble hung in space before him, seemingly defenseless and ripe for harvesting. His 4 arms moved gracefully across the control surfaces, while his compound eyes analyzed the tactical situation. After 800 years of collecting primitive worlds for the collective, this looked like another easy victory. "Report on the local defense fleet," Krelix commanded, his voice carrying the authority of countless conquests. His communications officer, a younger Zephyrian with nervous energy patterns flickering across his crystalline skin, quickly responded. "Commander, we detect approximately 47 human vessels scattered throughout their star system. Most appear to be using chemical propulsion and primitive fusion drives. Their largest ship measures only 800 meters in length. Analysis suggests their technology level is at least 2 centuries behind our capabilities." Krelix's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. 2 centuries behind meant this would be over within hours, perhaps less. The collective specialized in harvesting civilizations that had just reached space travel but hadn't yet developed proper defenses. Earth appeared to fit this category perfectly. Far below on Earth's surface, in a bunker buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Marcus Chen studied the same tactical displays with very different eyes. The 58-year-old officer had spent his entire career preparing for this moment. His weathered face showed no emotion as he watched the alien ships take positions around Earth, but his mind was racing through decades of careful planning. "Sir, the Zephyrian ships are moving into standard harvesting formation," reported his aide, Colonel Jennifer Walsh. "They're positioning themselves to cut off all escape routes from the inner system." Chen nodded slowly. Everything was proceeding exactly as projected. The collective always used the same tactics because they always worked. Overwhelming force, demonstrated superiority, and psychological pressure to force quick surrender. They had perfected the art of harvesting civilizations without destroying their useful infrastructure. "Have all fleet commanders received their orders?" Chen asked quietly. "Yes, sir. All ships are maintaining defensive positions and broadcasting standard distress signals. The collective should read us as panicked and disorganized." Chen allowed himself a small smile. The collective would read the situation exactly as intended because that's what they expected to see. After 3 decades of preparation, humanity was finally ready to spring their trap. On the bridge of the Star Render, Krelix opened a communication channel that would broadcast across the entire Earth system. His translator devices would ensure every human heard his message in their own language. "Inhabitants of the 3rd planet," his voice boomed across space, "I am Commander Krelix of the Zephyrian Collective. Your world has been selected for harvesting. You have 1 rotation of your planet to surrender completely. Submit your governments, your military forces, and your industrial capacity to collective control. Those who comply will be relocated to suitable worlds. Those who resist will be processed as organic resources." The message echoed through Earth's communication networks, reaching every corner of the planet. In cities across the globe, humans looked up at the night sky where alien ships now hung like vengeful stars. Fear spread through the population, but it was not the helpless terror Krelix expected. In the hidden command center, Admiral Chen listened to the ultimatum with professional interest. The collective's standard opening gambit hadn't changed in centuries. Their arrogance was both their greatest strength and their most exploitable weakness. "Sir," reported his sensor operator, "collective scouts are beginning detailed scans of our fleet positions." "Let them look," Chen replied. "Make sure they see exactly what we want them to see." Across the solar system, human ships began their performance. The outdated cruisers and aging frigates that made up Earth's visible fleet started broadcasting emergency signals. Some began moving away from the collective ships in apparent panic. Others powered down their weapons in gestures of premature surrender. To any observer, humanity appeared to be collapsing before the battle even began. But appearances, as the collective would soon learn, could be devastatingly deceiving. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden among millions of tumbling rocks, something vast began to stir. The Voidwalker had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for 30 years. At 8 kilometers in length and 3 kilometers wide, it was the largest ship ever built by human hands. Its adaptive camouflage had kept it invisible among the asteroids, its revolutionary stealth systems making it appear to be nothing more than another chunk of space debris. Captain Sarah Rodriguez stood on the carrier's bridge, watching her displays as the collective fleet positioned itself for harvesting operations. The 42-year-old officer had been born in space, raised on research stations, and trained specifically to command humanity's ultimate weapon. Her crew of 12,000 represented the finest minds Earth could produce, and every one of them had volunteered for a mission they might not survive. "All departments report ready, Captain," announced her executive officer, Commander Robert Kim. "Ghost Squadron is standing by for launch orders." Rodriguez nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. Ghost Squadron consisted of 48 fighters equipped with the most advanced technology humanity had ever developed. Each craft incorporated reverse-engineered collective systems, captured during decades of secret raids on their supply convoys. The pilots who flew them were legends among Earth's military, volunteers who had trained in absolute secrecy for this exact moment. "Not yet," Rodriguez said quietly. "Let them get comfortable first. Confident enemies make mistakes." The collective was indeed becoming confident. Their sensor sweeps of human ships revealed exactly what they expected: primitive technology, weak armor, and limited firepower. Commander Krelix reviewed the intelligence reports with satisfaction. This harvest would be completed ahead of schedule. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "human ships are maintaining positions but showing no signs of preparing for battle. Several have actually shut down their weapon systems." "Excellent," Krelix replied. "Deploy collection fleets to major population centers. Begin standard harvesting procedures." But even as he gave the order, something nagged at the back of his mind. In 8 centuries of conquest, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this system felt different, though he couldn't identify what. His concern deepened when his sensor operator reported strange readings from the outer system. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology appeared and vanished like ghosts. Gravitational anomalies suggested massive objects moving through space, but every time his ships investigated, they found nothing but empty vacuum. "Commander," his intelligence officer said carefully, "perhaps we should request additional support from the fleet. These readings are unusual." Krelix's compound eyes flashed with irritation. "Additional support? Against these primitives? Our 15 harvesters could destroy their entire civilization twice over." But doubt continued to grow in his mind as the strange readings multiplied. Across the system, his ships were detecting energy patterns that shouldn't exist and gravitational distortions that made no sense. It was as if the humans had technology his databases couldn't identify. The truth was far more complex than Krelix could imagine. For 30 years, ever since first contact with crashed collective ships, humanity had been preparing. They had studied every piece of alien technology they could recover. They had reverse-engineered captured weapons and propulsion systems. They had built ships using materials that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Most importantly, they had learned patience. In the command bunker, Admiral Chen watched the collective ships begin their harvesting deployment with grim satisfaction. The aliens were following their standard playbook perfectly, spreading their forces thin and exposing themselves to counterattack. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "Director Park confirms Project Leviathan is ready for activation." Chen nodded. Director James Park had overseen the construction of humanity's secret fleet from the beginning. hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, concealed weapons platforms around the gas giants, and stealth fighters scattered throughout the outer system. All of it was Park's vision made real. "Tell the director he has authorization for Phase 1, Chen ordered. "It's time to show the collective what humans do when cornered." As if summoned by his words, the strange energy readings across the system suddenly intensified. The collective sensors began detecting massive power buildups in locations where their scans showed only empty space. Commander Kralik stared at his displays in growing alarm as the impossible became undeniable. "Sir," his sensor operator called out in panic, "I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout the system. Whatever's generating them, it's been hiding from our scans." Kralik felt ice form in his chest cavity. In 800 years of conquest, no primitive civilization had ever successfully hidden technology from collective sensors. But the evidence was undeniable. Something vast and powerful was moving through the Earth system, something that had been invisible until this moment. "All ships to high alert," he commanded. "Prepare for possible engagement." But even as he gave the order, Kralik knew it might already be too late. The humans had drawn the collective deep into their system, scattered his forces across multiple targets, and somehow managed to hide their true capabilities until the perfect moment. In the asteroid belt, Captain Rodriguez watched her tactical display as the collective ships began to realize their mistake. The aliens were trying to regroup, pulling their scattered forces back into defensive formations. But they were too late. "All stations," she announced over the ship's communication system. "This is the captain. For 30 years, we've prepared for this moment. Today, we show the galaxy that humanity will never kneel. Launch all fighters. Begin Operation Nightfall." The Void Walker shuddered as its massive launch bays opened for the first time. 48 Ghost Squadron fighters erupted into space, their revolutionary engines leaving trails of distorted light. Each pilot had trained their entire adult life for this battle, and they flew ships that represented the pinnacle of human engineering. As the fighters spread across the system like a swarm of technological angels, the collective finally began to understand the trap they had flown into. The humans weren't primitives to be harvested. They were predators who had spent decades preparing for this hunt. The real battle was about to begin. Born from the void, space itself seemed to tear apart as the Void Walker dropped its camouflage and revealed itself to the collective fleet. The massive Supercarrier emerged from Neptune's shadow like a mechanical planet, its 8-kilometer hull bristling with weapons that had never appeared in any alien database. Adaptive armor plates shifted and flowed across its surface, while energy conduits pulsed with captured starlight. Commander Kralik stared at his displays in absolute shock. The ship that had just appeared was larger than anything in the collective's fleet, and its energy signature was completely unknown. His sensor operators frantically ran analysis programs, but their computers couldn't identify the materials or technology they were detecting. "Impossible," Kralik whispered, his forearms trembling as they gripped his command console. No primitive species could build something like that. But the evidence hung before him in space, undeniable and terrifying. The human Supercarrier was not only real but actively launching fighters at a rate that shouldn't be possible. His tactical displays showed dozens of small craft pouring from the massive ship's bays, each one moving with acceleration curves that defied his understanding of physics. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka sat in the cockpit of her Ghost Squadron fighter, watching her heads-up display as target locks appeared across her vision. The 26-year-old pilot had been born on Mars, trained on Europa, and spent the last 8 years preparing for this exact moment. Her fighter, the Shadow Dancer, incorporated technology from 6 different alien civilizations that humanity had encountered over the decades. Ghost leader to all squadrons, she broadcast over the tactical network. "Primary targets are the harvester ships. Remember your training. Hit fast, hit hard, and vanish before they can respond." The Ghost Squadron fighters moved through space like living shadows, their revolutionary propulsion systems allowing impossible maneuvers. They had been built using materials that bent light around them and engines that drew power directly from quantum foam. Each pilot flew a ship that was more advanced than anything the collective had seen in centuries of conquest. Krelix watched in horror as his ships began to explode. The human fighters appeared from nowhere, fired weapons that his sensors couldn't track, and vanished before his gunners could respond. In less than 5 minutes, 3 of his harvesters were nothing but expanding clouds of debris. All ships, defensive formation. He screamed into his communicator. Focus fire on those fighters. But the Ghost Squadron pilots had trained for this exact scenario. They used the collective's own formations against them, appearing in blind spots and firing through gaps in their defensive screens. Each attack was surgical, precise, and devastatingly effective. Captain Rodriguez watched the battle unfold from the Voidwalker's bridge with professional satisfaction. The collective was reacting exactly as their psychological profiles predicted, with confusion, panic, and increasingly desperate tactics. Their superior numbers meant nothing when they couldn't target what they couldn't see. "Captain," reported her weapons officer, "the enemy flagship is trying to break orbit. Should we pursue?" "Not yet," Rodriguez replied calmly. "Let them group up first. Concentrated targets are easier to eliminate." In the command bunker on Earth, Admiral Chen monitored the battle through quantum communication links. Every aspect of the engagement was proceeding according to plan, but he knew the real test was yet to come. The collective would adapt quickly once they recovered from their initial shock. "Sir," reported Colonel Walsh, "Phase 2 assets are in position. All stealth platforms confirm ready status." Chen nodded. Phase 2 would reveal the true scope of humanity's preparations. Hidden weapons platforms throughout the solar system were preparing to activate, each one disguised as natural objects or space debris. The collective had no idea they were flying through the largest minefield in galactic history. Commander Krelix struggled to maintain control as another of his ships died in silent fire. The human fighters were everywhere and nowhere, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before his weapons could respond. His crews were beginning to panic, and panic was contagious in space combat. "Commander," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship." "Put it through," Krelix snarled, hoping to at least understand what kind of enemy he was facing. The main screen flickered to life, showing Captain Rodriguez standing on the bridge of the Voidwalker. She looked calm, professional, and utterly deadly. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who held absolute power over life and death. "Commander Krelix," she said, somehow knowing his name despite never having met him. "I am Captain Sarah Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. You came here expecting to harvest a primitive civilization. Instead, you found hunters who have been preparing for your arrival for 30 years. Krelix stared at the human woman, trying to process her words. 30 years of preparation meant they had known about the collective long before first contact. It meant everything about this encounter had been planned, orchestrated, and executed with surgical precision. "Your harvest fleets have been operating in this region of space for centuries," Rodriguez continued. "We've been watching, learning, and preparing. Every ship you've sent through this system has taught us something new about your technology and tactics." The truth hit Krelix like a physical blow. The scattered reports of missing ships, the occasional technical failures, the minor equipment losses his fleet had experienced over the decades, it hadn't been accidents or natural hazards. The humans had been hunting them, capturing their technology, and reverse engineering everything they could get their hands on. "Impossible," he whispered. "No primitive species could hide a construction project spanning 3 decades. Rodriguez interrupted. "Could reverse engineer technology from civilizations centuries more advanced. Could build ships using materials that don't exist in your databases." Her smile was cold as vacuum. "Commander, you underestimated us because you wanted to. It made your job easier to believe we were helpless." As if summoned by her words, space around the collective fleet began to erupt with new contacts. Hidden weapons platforms revealed themselves throughout the system. their stealth fields dropping to show massive railgun installations, missile platforms, and energy weapons that drew power directly from the sun itself. Director James Park watched from his hidden command center in the asteroid belt as Project Leviathan finally revealed its true scope. For 30 years, he had overseen the construction of humanity's secret defensive network. Weapons platforms disguised as asteroids, fighters hidden in comet shells, and manufacturing facilities buried in gas giant moons. All of it designed for this single moment. All platforms, you are authorized to engage, he broadcast over the quantum network. Show them what humans build when we have time to think. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Energy beams lanced across space from hidden installations while missile swarms erupted from concealed launchers. The collective ships found themselves surrounded by weapons they hadn't known existed, fired from positions their sensors had dismissed as natural phenomena. Krellix's flagship shuddered under concentrated fire from 3 different directions. His shields were failing, his hull was breaching, and his crew was dying around him. In 8 centuries of conquest, he had never experienced defeat on this scale. All ships, he broadcast desperately. Emergency jump. Retreat to fleet coordinates. But even retreat was denied to him. The human weapons platforms had been positioned to cover all possible escape routes. Every time one of his ships tried to activate their jump drives, concentrated fire disabled their engines before they could escape. Lieutenant Tanaka swooped through the debris field that had once been a collective harvester, her fighter sensors picking up escape pods and survivors. The standing orders were clear: no prisoners, no witnesses, no intelligence that could return to the collective fleet. Ghost leader to all squadrons, she broadcast. Begin cleanup operations. I want every escape pod disabled and every data core destroyed. The human fighters moved through the wreckage with methodical precision, ensuring that no evidence of their capabilities could reach the greater collective. They had learned from decades of studying alien warfare. Information was often more dangerous than weapons. On the bridge of the Void Walker, Captain Rodriguez watched the battle wind down with mixed emotions. Victory was sweet, but she knew this was only the beginning. The collective would eventually send investigation fleets when this harvester group failed to report. Earth needed to be ready for whatever came next. Captain, her communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender requests from the remaining collective ships. Rodriguez considered the tactical situation. 7 collective ships remained functional out of the original 15, their commanders desperately broadcasting surrender codes and requests for mercy. According to the rules of war, she should accept their surrender and treat them as prisoners. But these weren't human rules of war, and the collective had never shown mercy to the civilizations they harvested. Denied, she said quietly. Continue the attack until all enemy ships are destroyed. The final phase of the battle was brief and decisive. Human fighters and weapons platforms concentrated their fire on the remaining collective ships, overwhelming their defenses through sheer volume of accurate fire. Within 20 minutes, the last harvester exploded in a brilliant flash of released energy. Commander Krellix died at his post, his final thoughts focused on the impossible reality of human preparation and patience. The species he had dismissed as primitive had spent decades becoming his superior, and he had never seen it coming. In the aftermath of the battle, space around Earth was filled with debris, and the scattered remnants of the most powerful fleet the collective had ever sent to harvest a single world. The humans had won through superior planning, advanced technology, and the kind of long-term thinking that their enemies couldn't comprehend. Admiral Chen stood in his command bunker, reviewing the battle reports with quiet satisfaction. Operation Nightfall had been a complete success, but he knew the real work was just beginning. The collective would eventually discover what had happened to their harvester fleet, and when they did, they would return with overwhelming force. Colonel Walsh, he said quietly, begin Phase 3 preparations. If this battle taught us anything, it's that we need to be ready for their next move. Yes, sir, Walsh replied. How long do you estimate we have? Chen studied the tactical projections on his displays. calculating travel times and response patterns based on 30 years of intelligence gathering. 2 years, maybe 3. When they come back, it won't be with harvesters. It will be with their war fleets. Captain Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the Void Walker, looking out at the debris field that marked humanity's first major victory against the Collective. The battle had proven that human ingenuity and preparation could overcome superior numbers and technology. But she knew this was only the first test. "Captain," Commander Kim joined her at the observation window. "What do you think they'll send next?" Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Everything they have. We just proved that humans are too dangerous to harvest. The only question now is whether we're too dangerous to let live." Far across the galaxy, automated monitoring stations began registering the loss of Harvester Fleet 7. Emergency protocols activated, and deep space communication arrays began transmitting priority alerts toward the Collective's core worlds. The loss of an entire Harvester fleet was unprecedented, and it would demand investigation. But by the time the Collective learned what had happened at Earth, humanity would have used those precious months to prepare for the next phase of the war. They had revealed their hand, shown their capabilities, and announced their presence to the galaxy. The harvest of Earth had failed, but the real battle for humanity's survival was only just beginning. In the darkness between stars, both sides would prepare for a conflict that would determine whether humans would join the galactic community as equals or be eliminated as a threat to the established order. The Void had given birth to something new, a human civilization that refused to kneel, prepared to fight, and determined to survive no matter the cost. The galaxy would never be the same.